Hello everyone, I am Mesh and I am Senior Test Automation Architect with 14 years of experience in software test automation. I got approved one patent and another one in queue. In my current role, I explore new technologies and tools in the market. I also introduce them to our test processes and bring value to the organization. Also providing a technical architecture, defining the strategic direction for the testing automation practices, and serving as an expert in defining and rolling out standard automation frameworks in line with latest industry trends. Also, I worked on the complex architecture, script-based automation, and etc. And I participate in application design reviews, ensuring quality automation practices, example test pyramid, TDD, and BDD culture. And definitely those are baked in the software development and deployment lifecycle. Now, what I'm going to start today is a very important topic, and most of the people they just ask us to start and they request us to take the sessions on XPath, and not only that, but I'm going to do the XPath on multiple browsers. Like I'm going to go work on the Edge, then Firefox, then Chrome, and Opera. Okay, so I'm going to show you all these four browsers along with Safari too, but just bear some time with me because I am sure this is not possible to complete XPath in a one session. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry over this XPath session for the next session as well, because I know there is a huge thing that you need to learn from the XPath side, and so that's the reason, so that I can at least start on some of the browsers today. I can explain you how the DOM looks like, how the tree structure looks like, and how we can use the functions. Like I already show a couple of functions in my previous sessions too, but I'm going to do that one by one in these sessions. Okay, so bear some time with me, so that it may take some time to understand XPath definitely, but I'll try to cover most of the areas which people may ask you in interview, so that it is very easy for you to follow in further your interview or any other or where you are currently working. Okay, so now what the first question comes in our mind is what is an XPath? Okay, so the first question always comes into the mind is what is an XPath? And yes, I mean this is not that easy, that if somebody asks you what is an XPath and we are not aware about the answer. Okay, now let me explain you first what is an XPath, and then we'll go one by one. Okay, now what I can do, XPath is just called as an XML path. Now I know most of you are aware about what is an XML path, but this is an extensible markup language, and when I talked about XPath, it is called as an XML path, and it's a language to query your XML documents. So XPath is just a language to query your XML documents. When I talked about query, that means I wanted to fetch one specific data from this your XML path, or using your XML path from your XML documents. That means the runtime HTML, and that is called as your XPath. Okay, and when we talked about XPath, it's a very important strategy to locate your elements in the Selenium. Okay, so in Selenium, when we talked about XPath, people always talked about how do we identify the XPath, and what is XPath, and why XPath. These are the questions. These are the questions people may ask you in interview. Okay, but when we said do we use XPath, so I would recommend, yes, there are two things, XPath and the CSS selector. So I would suggest yes, go with CSS selector. I'll try to cover CSS selector in some of my upcoming sessions, but as of now I would say yes, go with the XPath, okay, or CSS. Okay, just let's focus currently on the XPath. Okay, now somebody asks you what is XML document. the question comes, you said XPath is just a query to your XML document that will return some values, like what I'll get the values like in your database. Same way, XPath is used as a query to get some data from your XML documents. Okay. Now when I now when I talked about when I talked about the XML document, I would say XML document is a tree structure. Okay, XML document is just a tree like structure. So I'll just go back on age. Okay, I'll just go back on the age, and I wanted to show you if we do have that tree like structure here. Let's see if you can see. I'll simply try to inspect this. Okay, can you see this? If I'll try to inspect this, I simply click and click here. Okay, I simply click here. Now, if you can see, I can clearly look at this accessibility tree. If you can see, there is an accessibility tree, and this is my accessibility tree. If you find here, this is just my accessibility tree. In my accessibility tree, I can see this is like a tree structure. If I can just take this in this way, and I can show you, this is my heading. Within the heading, I can see my text, that is a registration form or Selenium automation testing. Now on the form, I can see some of the multiple. If you can see, there is another heading, and this is my registration form. So sorry, previously it was Selenium automation testing, now it is registration form. And if you can see, there are multiple elements available within this tree structure. Okay, there are multiple elements available within this tree structure. Now when I talked about this tree structure, always this is my parent and child and child. So tree structure will hold the node. Those are its child node. Like application is holding the child node, like form and heading. Same way, application is holding form, and child of child is your heading or your text box and some others. Like if you wanted to see here, it is again, if you can see, there is a link which is again a child node to this form. Okay, so you can just explain in the interview how the DOM structure, or we can say the XML documents, looks like. So XML documents is always looks like as an accessibility tree. Okay, so that's what I want to show you. This is my accessibility tree. Okay, this is how it looks like. Now I'll go. This is I hope this is just I'm just going one step ahead and bit in a simplest way, so that you can start from the scratch till the dynamic XPath as well. So I'm going to explain you about the static as well as the dynamic XPath, from the basics till the advanced level of XPath. How do you write it? Okay, so bear some time on this thing, guys. Okay, so now let me go back. I can go back here. Okay, so let's take an example of here. Okay, I'll just try to write some of XPath here, and then we'll try. Now what people is asking you, you can explain these are the XML document, and it looks like your tree like structure, which is already we can see. Now people may ask you the question, how many types of XPath are there? So there are always two types of XPath: absolute XPath and a relative XPath. There are always two types of XPath: absolute XPath and a relative XPath. Now, what is absolute XPath, and how do we identify those absolute XPath? So always it is just a direct way to find the element. Okay, but the disadvantage of your absolute XPath is that, so always your absolute XPath starts from your root. Okay, so when I talked about the root, let me show you here. Let me show back. Okay, so can download this closed. Okay, so now if you can see, this is my HTML, this is my root, this is my body. Under the body I do have the div, under the div I have another div, then form, and then my input. Okay, I simply inspect my username, and if you can see, it is starting from your HTML body div and then form an input. Okay, this whole path is nothing but from the root, so is my absolute X path. Now the question comes in, how do you identify this absolute X path? Okay, how do you identify this absolute X path? Before that, let me start my script, something new that we can start it today. Okay, I'm not sure. Okay, let me start the new session, new class. Okay, so new class I am going to start, and the class name is XPath session. Okay, I'll just take an example of XPath session. We'll go in detail about this XPath session. Don't worry about it. So let me go back. That's it finished. Okay, and okay, so I do have this my XPath here. I'll simply today I'm not going to take, so okay, so I'll simply take this Chrome option. Last time we had taken that Chrome option, so I'm going to remove this Chrome option today. Not required. I took that for the headless browser. Okay, I simply take this. Now I'll take this driver dot get and my URL. Let me get the URL. Let me get this URL. So guys, I'm going to download, showcase you some of the important site like the jQuery site, which is developed purely in the latest technology, where I'm going to show you some of the advanced level of components or the web elements which we are going to work and identify using XPath. Okay, so that's why I'm telling you it may take some time for you guys, and you can definitely or surely you can find those. Okay, don't worry about it. Now what I'll do, I'll just give my URL here. I'll just add my URL here. Okay, and now I'll just try to write my absolute XPath. Now when I say absolute XPath, I'll go back to the site here, and I was thinking I wanted to get the absolute XPath for this username. So on the Chrome browser, where you are finding currently all the elements, let's say I'm finding all these elements. Now what I need to do, I need to get this absolute XPath first. Okay, we are not going to spend more time on the absolute XPath, though it is not required and it is not a good way to write your XPath. Okay, but I want to just show you how do you identify the absolute XPath. So let's right click, and you can go to the copy, and if you can go here, you can copy your XPath. Okay, so right click on the element, copy, and you can just get that copy XPath from here. You simply copy that XPath from here if you want, and currently yes, definitely we need to write here driver dot find element by dot XPath, and I can give that XPath expression here. Now see how that XPath expression comes here. See, can you see this XPath HTML? It starts with HTML. I said absolute path always starts with root. If you can see here on this Chrome at the bottom, what you can find, this is my HTML, then my body, then my div, form, and input. So the same way you are getting it here, HTML, body, div, then form, and then your input. Definitely you will get here some of the index. The reason behind is if you want to identify first, then it is identifying my first input text box. If you wanted to identify second, then you can mention some of the numbers based on your indexing. Okay, so I'm not going more in detail about that we can see it later on. Now what I get here, I got this my whole absolute XPath, and if you can see, my absolute XPath always starts with the single backslash. Okay, absolute XPath always starts with my single slash. But when we talked about the relative, it is always starts with the two backslash. Okay, so we'll see that. Just hold on. Okay, so we'll go there. Now I can get my absolute XPath. Let's try to do some operation on this XPath. So no need to assign any of to this web element. I'll simply write dot my send keys, and I said what I need to send. So I said I wanted to send Mahesh as my user. Okay, so I simply said I wanted to send Mahesh as a user here, and let's try to run this code base and we'll see how it run this code base. Okay, so I'll execute this code. And let's see, it should open the Chrome browser. Then it should enter my URL, and with the XPath it should identify a specific element. Okay, so let's see if yes. So if you can see what it did, it is identifying with that absolute XPath which we identify currently. Okay, now my absolute XPath, now I'll tell you how that absolute XPath is failed. Okay, so this is how as of now we did. Now I'll just close this. Let's say you have all your XPath, the absolute XPath from your root, from your HTML till your element. Now I go back here, and what I will go back and do the change here. Instead of form, I'll make this as a table, for example. See what happened. Instead of form, I simply made this as a table. Now my whole absolute path is changed. If you can see, my absolute path is changed now. What happened now? Now my absolute path, that means from my root, it is changed. HTML, then body, then div, but this time instead of form, it is table. So this is possible. Any one of your developer or someone, they can do this action. This is 100% possible. This action may be possible. Your HTML, body, div, or they can change any of this basic root element. So sorry guys, this is my dog, and okay. So okay. So now this is 100% possible. Okay, so if that changed, now think in a way if that is change. Now do you think we are able to identify this element using this absolute XPath? And that is how we are getting failed to identify a single web element due to this. Okay, that is how we are getting failed to identify this single web element. Okay, so definitely yes, that is not possible. You'll not able to identify. That's why what people are saying. Do not go with absolute XPath, because it has a disadvantages, like if somebody change any of this root element, somebody change any of this CSS, then it is failed to identify the element. So our first option is over, that is absolute XPath. Okay, we can say we are not going to use the absolute XPath anymore for our test case or test automation scripts. Now we said how many types, so it is a second type. That is your relative XPath. Okay, now when we talked about the relative XPath, it is a very basic. Okay, I'll start with some of the basic relative XPath, but it is very basic to identify what is the difference between absolute and the relative. So I said there are 1 forward slash for your absolute XPath. Same way for relative XPath, there are 2 forward slashes. So that means there are double forward slash, which says I am going to start searching the element anywhere at the web page from this location. I am going to identify this element, or I am going to search the element anywhere in the web page from this location. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to identify the web page or the element from anywhere on this web page. Okay, now this is how the the relative XPath works. Now let's try to identify how do we identify this relative XPath. So the people may ask you, is there a way that how do we write our relative XPath? Is there a way by which we can write our relative XPath? So I can show you the relative XPath and then I'll explain you what exactly the relative XPath is. So let me write down here. So relative XPath always starts with a double forward slash. Okay, so these are your double forward slash. After double forward slash, you can give your tag name. You can give your tag name. Now it is the name of your any of the tag from where or that is nothing but your node. So when I said node, these are your nodes always. Okay, when you said this is my tag, these are your nodes always. Okay, now when we said I wanted to identify that with the tag name, then I said this is my square bracket. Okay, then I said this is my square bracket. Now after the tag name I need to give any of the specific attribute. Now I talked about attribute. When I said attribute, here if you can see, input is my tag and type is my attribute. Same way name is my attribute. Okay, if I can go back here on my this is my LinkedIn profile, I'll simply go and try to inspect something here. Let's see if you can see here. Same way div is my tag, id is my attribute, same way class is my attribute, and if you can see, a is my tag, data test global is my attribute, and my data resource is attribute, and multiple attributes. So your tag can hold multiple attribute. That means you are always scripts that works on the attribute. That means your relative XPath is based on always a attribute. Always an attribute. Now when we say attribute, what is at the rate we are using here? Okay, when I say at the rate, that at the rate is used to select this attribute. What I'm saying, when I say at the rate, it is used to select this attribute. Okay, so at the rate says this is I am using to select this attribute, and I am going to say this is my attribute value. This is my attribute value. So I am going to find a tag with this attribute, and this is my attribute value. So I'm going to jumping directly from the web page that is using from my current node. So double forward slash is nothing but my current node. Okay. So this is how we are going to right now identifier the same XPath which we find out here, where we enter our username. Let's go back and try to identify here. Now I told you this is my XPath. Now I need to write my XPath. How do I write my XPath? Always, if I want to write my XPath, okay, if I wanted to write my XPath, I can go back here and I will start. Okay, I'll tell you one thing. There is XPath and there is CSS. There is XPath and there is CSS. I will definitely take the CSS later on, and I'll explain you, because I know CSS is better than XPath, but I'll let you know the XPath is most of the time in interview people may ask you, but in case I guess there is some disturbance today. There is some challenges. Okay, just a second. Okay, it is working. Okay, so now, okay, so now let's start here. I will write the $x and this. When I write a $x, okay, when I write a $x, what is $x? So always $x is used to write your XPath. I can say $x is used to write your XPath. So remember this basic stuff. Okay, when you start to write your XPath, you can go to your console. Okay, you can go to your console here. Once you go back to your console, you simply write your $x. Then I can write here double quote. Okay, then I can write here double quote, and in the double quote, now I'm going to start writing my own XPath. Here I'm going to start write my XPath. Okay, so let me now, what I can do, as it says, I am going to write my node, the current node. Now what is my current node? I said I wanted to identify this, and it has the tag input. Let's go back and write the tag input. Once I write the tag input here, I can get there are 4 different input tags. I can write there are 4 different input tags. Okay, now I can get here 4 input tags. So everyone knows why I'm getting 4 input tags here. Okay, is that mean that we do have the 4 input tag over here? Okay, okay, so there is definitely 4. So let's enter this first. I wanted to identify which 4 of those. Okay, so let's go back here, and I need to identify. So this is my first, then this is my second, then this is my third, and if I can see which one is the fourth. So submit is also having the input tag. If you can see, submit is also having the input tag. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, and 4, it is also having the input tag here. So that means I can hold 4 input tag. But what I said, as per if I'm going back here, and as per my absolute XPath, I want the first. What it says, I want the first one. Okay, now do you think I can identify that first one here? So let's try to implement the absolute XPath. So what is the absolute XPath says? In this square bracket, you just give the reference of your attribute. Which attribute do you want to select? Okay, which attribute do you want to select? I'm going back in my elements, and I said I want to select a name. Can you see here there is a name attributes available? I want to select that name, so that I can simply write here name, and it, as I mentioned, I need to use @name, because I said I wanted to select. I said I wanted to select, and now its value is name. Once I can do, see how many elements I can identify. Okay. Once I do, I can identify a single wave element. If I can highlight that element, it is highlighting my first username. That means it is highlighting my username, and I wanted to identify the username only. So is that looking easy? So how I identify my relative path? I simply says input and then @name equals the name. Okay, because it was the value. I guess attribute is having the value name equals name. Okay, this is very basic, but let's go back on from that side. Okay, so even though it may take some more time, guys, I'll go more in detail and try to explain you everything. Okay, so don't worry about that. from my side. Okay, so now I'll go back. Now let's say I'm commenting my this line. Okay, I'm simply commenting my that line, and this time I'm going to write driver dot find element by dot XPath, and this time I'm going to change my XPath expression. What is my XPath expression here? I'll simply copy this XPath expression from here. Okay, and I will paste it here. Let's see. So once I paste it here, it's a send keys and do this operation. Okay, so this time instead of from root, what I'm doing, I'm just writing from a specific node. I'm just writing from the specific node. I said I wanted to identify that single element with the unique attribute and its value. Now let's try to execute this code base, and then I'll show you something very interesting after this. Just a second, let it execute. Let it execute so that we can see whether it's working or not working. We'll just identify that first. Key, and yes, so it's entered Mahesh here. Let's close. Now the next question. Now we'll go one by one the question on the XPath. Now people may ask you, let's write here $x and this, and then people may ask you, do you think if I write this and I write a star, do you think that works? Do you think that works? Anyone wants to answer what is the star here? Anyone wants to answer what is the star here? Any one of you? Any one of you want to answer what is the star here? Yes, good answer Arun, Charvita, very good answer. Chetan, yes, it says any tag. Yes, it says any tag, very good. So when I mention the star, it says any tag within this page. It is saying any tag within this page. I wanted to identify any tag within this page. Now do you think the same, that means what I had written here, the same will work for that any tag? Same will work for any tag. Do you think this will work for any tag now? What I did, I simply write this time instead of input, previously we were written here input, now I simply change that. I simply change that input to star because I'm saying any tag. So what happened? If on the same page, if multiple tags having name equals name, so do you think it may identify a multiple input web elements or multiple the web elements? Do you think that is possible? Yes? Okay, good money, good. So what I said, if you still identify and try to identify this element, then it will identify the multiple elements over here. Okay, now let's change this. Okay, now I said I have this input, now I wanted to identify the multiple elements. Okay, now I wanted to identify the multiple elements. Let's go back on the jQuery now. Okay, on the jQuery page, I do have multiple buttons here. I do have the checkbox, control group, date picker, and we saw already this date picker and control. So I'm going on button right now so that it will identify the buttons. Okay, so let's try to find out the button here. Okay, we will just explore one of these the button, or I just simply wanted to identify the submit button. Let's try to inspect this now. Okay, so if you can see here, I do have a value equals a submit button. If you can see here, the value equals a submit button. Okay, so I do have my query. Now if this is a jQuery, okay, and it used very latest technologies, these web pages. So jQuery UI is very latest technology. That's why I'm taking this page, so that I can explain you. Most of the time people may ask you, can we write always a protractor will help you to write your XPath and finding the elements from the scratch? Do not worry about that, guys. I mean, I can guarantee you, if you try to follow these processes, you can start writing your own XPath rather than your protractor or any other tool. Okay, you can write your own XPath, which will help you to build any of your site. You can maintain that site. Okay, so don't worry about it. So I'm going to explain that how do you write it. Okay, now I'll go back here on my console. I can simply write this time again another XPath. I said let's try to identify this XPath this time. I said this and star. I said this and star. I just wanted to identify my value equals a submit button. Let's try. So I said at the rate value. Oh, sorry. So I said it is taking that one, the previous one. Okay, so it takes at the rate value equals this. So it is identifying the two web elements. See, it is showing you the two web elements. Okay, what it says, you are going to identify here two web elements, but I want to identify any one of these, let's say first or second. Okay, so there are two different buttons. One is from the widget button, another from the CSS button. Okay, they are showing both the technologies here. That's why I'm showing you this. Okay, now let's say I want to identify only this as a unique locator. I wanted to identify only this with the unique locator. When it returns always a multiple, when it returns always a multiple elements, then you can store that multiple web elements in the find elements. Okay, that means the list of web elements. You can use the list of web elements so that you can get the multiple web elements. You can store that web elements. Okay, I'll go on the regular expression also based on this, but just give me some time so that I can show you some of the inbuilt methods to work on that. Okay, now once I said okay, let's hit finish, I can go this, and this time I can find out what is the unique within this both the buttons. So here it is a class, and the class is UI button, same name, okay, or different name. Okay, both are the different name. You have the type submit. Okay, so role is button here, and here role is not a button. So let's try to write the same. And what I will do here, I'll simply write this time another method. This time a role is equals to a button. See what happened. This time I am using another tag, okay, or another inputs, that is my or and. I am using or and. So currently I am using and. What and says, if both the attributes, that means my both the condition mate. If my both the condition mate, then it returns something. If it mates, if both the condition mates, then only it returns something which it mates. So let's hit enter, and I simply wanted to see which element is written. So can you see it is returning me the first web element. So it is returning me the first web element. So sometimes the question in interview, if I wanted to give the condition with the multiple attributes, okay, if I wanted to get the elements with the multiple attributes, how is it possible? So it is possible with the help of your and or. Okay, so when you write and, it is identifying this if both the condition made, then it says if this returns true and this returns true, then only it returns you the value, or it returns you the object, or it returns you the web element. Okay, so that's how it's worked. Now the next, can we use or here? Can we use or here? Can we use or here? Once I used or, see what happened. Immediately I used or, I can get multiple, because what or says if this condition met or this condition met. It says either this or this. It says either this or this. If this condition meets, then only I can say it is saying if 1 and 0, then it returns 1. If 0 and 1, still it returns 1. 1 and 1, still it returns 1. But if both are not made, then only it will say there is nothing to return. That means array will not return anything in this particular condition. So let me see how many elements. So it returns this is first, it returns this is first, this is second, and this is third. Can you see? It returns first, second, and third. Definitely a submit button made in first and third, but I wanted to identify what is made in anchor. So let's go back in anchor. We can just go back in anchor and we'll see. Yes, can you see here also the role is equals to button? So here also the role is equals to button. That's why it says we identify 3 different elements. That's why it says we identify the 3 different elements. Okay, that is how we can simply use and or conditions to identify your locators. Now let's try to find something. Okay, so let me try to find the another, and that is your this. Okay, so let's see. I can simply see here. I can go with one of the another function. Let me tell you what that function is. I can go back on this button. Okay, and if you can see, all these buttons are starting with UI dash button. Okay, all these buttons are going to be start with UI dash button. I wanted to identify how many elements are holding this class equals to UI dash button. I wanted to identify all those elements which holds the class equals to UI dash button, but it holds something different values too. It holds something a different values too. Like you can say class equals UI button, UI corner, and all UI widget. This is something different here. Okay. So now if I wanted to identify this, I can go here and then I'll explain. I'll just clear this, and now $x. I said what I need to do this time. There is a very interesting functions. Okay, there is a inbuilt functions. There is a inbuilt functions in XPath. Okay, I'll go with that function. So when I talked about these functions, there are like your content, starts with, text, and I can show you some position last session also, but I'll show you in dynamic XPath those couple of those functions. Don't worry. Now what I said, $x, and this time I am going to use a one function, and this time I am going to use one function. So how function is built? Function says this is I am opening and closing round bracket is always my function. I said this is my function, and now what I need to identify? I need to identify a class which starts with a UI dash a button. I said which starts with UI dash button. Can you see how many elements I am identifying here? Can you see how many elements I am identifying here? It is too easy for you to know how to use this UI or the starts with command. Okay, this is my one of the function. Now question, what it starts with? So start with is a function and which is used to find a web element and whose value of an attribute changes on the refresh or on any other dynamic operation. Let's say some of my elements are changing regularly. Let's say I can have one of my text box. Okay, let's take an example of this text box. I have this text box and the ID of this text box always change, like ID1, ID2, ID3, and randomly it is changed, but ID is the value always fixed. What I said, ID is the value always fixed. The number after ID is always changed. Like somebody is having 1, 2, 3, sometimes 25, sometimes 30. But I need to identify all the text box. So all the text box is having the dynamic value, that is a number at the end, but it has the fixed value, that is ID at the beginning. So that time I can use this starts with. Or if I refresh this page and then elements change or this random value change, so that time also I will use a starts with. Okay, so that time also I will use this starts with. This is how we can use the starts with. And now I wanted to show you. We identify. Okay, so I guess we were writing some other page. Okay, so we identify the six web elements. So first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. Okay, we identify all the 6 web element on this web page. Let's go back and try the same on this LinkedIn page. Okay, let's go back and try to the same. How do we use this starts with on the LinkedIn? Okay, I wanted to see we can use the starts with on the LinkedIn. So what I can do, I simply wanted to identify how many links are there or images are there. Okay, I simply wanted to identify how many images are there which has some of the source file. Okay, which has some of the source file. Let's go back and write here. This time I can simply clear this. I can write $x, and this time again this time I can say I said image. Okay, I wanted to find out the image, so let me close this. Okay, so this time I wanted to find out the image, and this image is again a starts with what this starts with. This starts with src, and src is holding, I'm going bit shorter way, so src is holding https, for example. Okay, I'm going to identify all the images which hold the source attribute and starts with https. See how many images I have identified here. So I have identified almost 19 images here. Okay, so I have identified almost 90 images here, and the reason behind that 90 images is all the images are holding your src as a https. Okay, all is holding src as equals your https. Okay, that is what that value is holding. I'll simply change my query. So okay guys, again I'm repeating, when I'm writing XPath, I'm writing my query against my document, XML document. This is my XML document, and I'm writing my query to fetch some data. And that is returning me some of the data at runtime. Okay, and if I can write the same into my Selenium script, I'll get some of the values. Okay, now let's go back over here, and this time I'll simply change some of my code base now. And I will try here. I need the answer from some of you. I'll try to identify first this. Let's see this. Okay, so okay, I guess it is not identified. Okay, so I identify this search box. Okay, this is my search box now. And what I need to use, I can use some of the different to identify this search box. Let's see what is here used or common. I can simply say type equals text, how many search boxes I can get, or I can simply say how many elements I can identify with type equals text. So this time clear one more time. I can, okay, sorry, I can write $x and I said this is my star. I wanted to see how many. I said I wanted to find how many. So let's try to identify how many are a type equals a text. I wanted to identify how many types equals text. So if you can see, I can identify only one. I can get only one search text box. Okay, using my XPath I can get only one text box. Okay, this is very simple XPath I had written, which will get me a single using starts with. I'm just simply getting a one element. I'm going back here. I can simply try the same here. Let's say I'm trying here, and I said let's take an example of this. I said start, and I said I wanted to find or starts with, this time again the same, at type equals my text. So if you can see, I am getting here three web elements. If you can find, I can get here three web elements. This is my first, second and three. I can get here a multiple web element using the starts with here. But same way I am getting one element because it is only one element available on this web page. Okay, there are these two different things. Okay guys, so I simply wanted to show you how we are identifying or using some of the inbuilt functions to identify your XPath. Okay, so I use this and find this particular three elements. Now the question, do you think I can identify any specific web element? Let's say there are three, but do you think if I write here the one, then do you think I can identify the first? See what happened. So if I remove this, I'll show you. So with the previous XPath, I'm finding three input. With the previous input, previous XPath, I'm finding three. Now let's say I have the request that I need to get my first text box. I need to get my first text box. Okay, that is what a request. Okay, so if somebody asks you to get the first, text box, how do you get it? So I simply write here the index. I simply write here the index and I'm getting that element. Okay, so I'm simply getting that element. I'm getting my username. If you can see here, I'm getting my username. With that one, I'm getting my username. Okay, this is very simple. Okay, this is very simple. But let's take an example. I wanted to explore you now the new functions. Okay, now I can show you some of the functions here. Can you see? I wanted to identify this login button, let's say. So if you can see, this login is having some text. This login is having some text. So if I wanted to identify this login, how do I start? So I can simply go back on my console. I can clear this. Again, I can write here $x and backslash, again star, and this time there is a function. This time there is a function. What I'm using? I'm using a function, and the function value should be a login. If you can see, this time I'm using a function text. So this is nothing but an expression which is used with the text function to locate an element with exact text. So this function will help you to locate any element with your exact text. So if I can see here login, it is identifying this element with the exact text. Let's try to identify if it's identify. Yes, it is identify this with the exact text. Okay, now I can go back my jQuery and let's try to identify here if exact text will identify. Okay, so can you see there is some of the label I can see. Okay, So let's try to identify with this legend, select a location. Okay, there is a legend also. Sometimes people may ask you the question, how do we identify the legend? And legend is not identified with most of the people. These are the same like your labels. Okay, so what happened, I wanted to identify this, select a location. So let's go back here, let's write the function one more time, and I can go back here. I said this time I wanted to identify the legend. What is legend? So I wanted to identify the legend with the text, and that text met with select a location. Okay, so I'm simply trying to write it from here, select a location. Okay, so I think the text is something different. Let's copy from here so that we cannot miss. So I simply copy that text and paste it here. So if you can find, I am getting that legend. So if you can find, I am getting that legend here. So you can use this text function, and text function will use as an expression, and that will help you to locate an element with the exact text. That will help you to identify the element with the exact text. Okay, this will help you to identify the element with the exact text. That is how you are using. Now the question, do you think I can use this text function along with the previous starts with? Do you think I can use this text function along with the start with? So let's go back on my LinkedIn one more time, and I do have jobs here. Okay, I do have the jobs and my network. Let's try to identify with the jobs. So let's say $X this time, and I'm going to identify this with starts with. Okay, so I'll just see how we can use the starts with along with external function, that is my text. I wanted to see the value is a jobs. See how we can get that element. See what I did here. Okay, do not confuse yourself, guys. I can use function within the function. These are the inbuilt function. I'm simply using that function within another function. Okay, simply. So this is purely your logic. You can use that logic by any way. Okay, if you wanted to use this logic, any of these different way you can use. So based on your logic, always you can get some of the return value or web element using your XPath. So what I did here is just find. I said I wanted to jump to the node or any node here. Okay, so sorry. I said to any of the node, but what I said, the it will starts with the text. What my text function? Text function will return me the text between your element. That means what exactly you can see on your screen, you can find it here itself. You said starts with the text and it has the value jobs. You can starts with the text and it has the value jobs here. So once you can enter that, you can get there are the jobs. So I know there are two elements. So I think the first one is just high level and second one is your jobs, because it has its title. The first one is its image, okay, and second one is the actual your link text. The second one is actual your link text. This is how you can use this starts with. So guys, what I can do now, I know it is bit longer today, so I would suggest I can take some more sessions on the XPath. You can just be tuned. I'll ask the team to share the next session details with you guys. I'm going more in detail about the XPath on the different browsers in the next session. So I'm going to show you how do we identify the XPath on the different browsers. I am going to show you how do we use the different methods or different locators or different jQuery or any other latest technologies XPath. Okay, till that point I'm just going to stop it here today, and in the next session we'll meet again on the XPath. Thank you so much for joining, guys. We'll meet again in the next session. Have a good night. Bye.